Just a few days back, the CrowdStrike situation caused chaos across the entire globe, knocking out 8.5 million Windows devices, which, considering just how many Windows devices probably exist out there, that may not sound like that many. But this is going down as one of the biggest IT outages ever recorded. Now, it's not the case that this was affecting the regular old personal device that you had. Oh, you got like a Windows 11 gaming PC. Oh, it's going down. No, all of that stuff is fine. This was caused by CrowdStrike's Falcon software. This is known as Endpoint Detection and Response. TLDR? Antivirus on steroids. So you know how there is kernel-level anti-cheat? Here we have kernel-level antivirus. And if you tried to go shopping that day, or in some cases the following days, and in some cases even until now, there are a lot of businesses that were only accepting cash, or in many cases, just could not function and were completely offline. Many airports and pieces of medical equipment were completely unusable. There were people left stranded in the middle of a connecting flight and like, wait, where am I? Oh, I'm in this random city I've never heard of. Okay, well, how long am I going to be here? Oh, you don't know? That's good. Now, because of all the confusion here, there is a lot of people just not really sure on what's going on. I've seen like actual news outlets trying to blame Microsoft in this situation, which is frankly really stupid. I like to bully Microsoft whenever I get a chance to do so. Even if it's a very little situation and I can make just like a little jab here and there, I'll do so. And yes, I did make some jokes about the situation, like, haha, it's a nice day to be running Linux, all that fun stuff. But being honest, this had nothing to do with Microsoft. This was caused by a faulty, and considering recent history of CrowdStrike, probably entirely untested update pushed out to users for kernel-level software. And as kernel-level code tends to do when you don't have a true microkernel, Windows is not a microkernel, it is a hybrid kernel. It has monolithic parts and it has micro parts. When you have a case like this and kernel-level code goes bad, it tends to go really, really badly and bring down your entire system, which is exactly what happened. You had systems all across the globe just blue screening as soon as they saw this update. Now, I generally like Tom's Hardware, but I think Tom's Hardware might have had one of the stupidest takes on this entire situation. Microsoft's EU agreement means it will be hard to avoid CrowdStrike-like calamities in the future. Microsoft cannot block access to the Windows kernel because of an agreement it has with the EU. So, in this article, Tom's Hardware basically tries to argue that because companies like CrowdStrike are able to write kernel-level software, and I don't like random kernel-level software existing as much as the next person, but because you're able to write this software, that means it is the EU's fault for this occurring. Let me inform you about this operating system known as Linux. It is open source. Anybody can go and write a kernel module. Now, here's the fun thing about faulty kernel modules. They don't cause things to crash in two situations. One, when they're not faulty, when people actually test their code. You know, the people writing the software, that being CrowdStrike. Two, if you're not using them. If CrowdStrike wasn't this giant monolith that millions of businesses around the globe were all relying on, this also wouldn't have happened. At the end of the day, it all comes back to CrowdStrike. If you write bad software, it doesn't matter what operating system you're writing it for. Bad software is bad software. This is about as dumb as people that were arguing that iPhones were gonna get hacked because Apple was forced to allow sideloading. Yeah, if you install malware, you installed malware. Also, when we talk about sideloading on every other operating system, this is just known as installing software. It's only on mobile systems that sideloading exists as a term. But we're not talking about sideloading in this video, we are talking about CrowdStrike. Now, a lot of people out there have talked about like what's happening in the CrowdStrike situation, how this can be prevented in the future, and all that fun stuff. But there's some fun stuff to the side, which a lot of people aren't giving as much attention. So, in the wake of this going on, a lot of threat actors have been really taking advantage of this. For example, one on CrowdStrike's own blog, there have been people pretending to be from CrowdStrike distributing manuals on how to resolve the CrowdStrike issue. This is being distributed in the form of a document. One of the samples they had is called New Recovery Tool to Help with CrowdStrike Issue Impacting Windows.docm. And I shouldn't need to remind you, if you are using the Microsoft Office Suite or another Office Suite that supports compatible macros, opening random documents you find off the internet is incredibly dangerous because macros exist. Upon opening the document, a macro is going to run, and this is going to download the second stage DLL from this address right here. This is going to be a data stealer. Just simply put, this is going to steal your data, and this is obviously targeting businesses. So if you happen to be running some retail, you're in an airport, you're something like this, you don't really want your data being stolen, because if you have the CrowdStrike situation, and then on top of that, there is a giant data leak because you badly handled the CrowdStrike situation, it's not going to be good for your customers. It's not going to be good for your share price. In the same vein, we have an article here from Bleeping Computer. In this case, this isn't a manual. This pretends to be software that patches CrowdStrike. And instead of patching CrowdStrike, this isn't a data stealer. It's just a data wiper. So, on the scale of how bad this is for your customers, data wiper probably not as bad. Honestly, I'm surprised we're not hearing reports of ransomware. That seems like the most obvious thing to do here. Now, I'm not big on the whole US politics thing on this channel, but this is an exception. Members of the US Congress are calling for a congressional hearing with the CrowdStrike CEO to testify about this outage and basically grill him about what happened here. Now, considering the cases in the past, like the one with Mark Zuckerberg, I have a feeling the questions are going to be really stupid. But it is going to maybe happen. Now, initially, this was all being discussed in the context of Windows because, for all of us out of the loop, this seemed like just a Windows issue. And the issue at hand specifically was related to a bad update shipped out to Windows customers. The CEO put out this statement: CrowdStrike is actively working with customers impacted by a defect found in a single content update for Windows host. Mac and Linux hosts are not impacted. This is not a security incident or cyber attack. Now, Jerry Soller here makes a great point. In a just world, your company would not survive this. Here's just like a fun little bit of history about George Kurtz. Back in 2010, when McAfee had this giant defective update, where was George Kurtz working? He was working at McAfee. Not just like as a regular grunt, he was the CTO at the time. Now, are these two events directly related? No, not really. However, it's very funny to see that George Kurtz is in a major leadership position of two different companies causing a global PC outage. Does that indicate something about his role in leadership? and the things that he requires people under him to be doing? I don't know, but it certainly makes you think about it. Now, there is another part of the situation that hasn't really gotten that much coverage. The Linux side of this, because there is absolutely no reason that an outage like this cannot happen on Linux. In fact, there is no reason why an outage like this cannot happen on Linux with the exact same software that CrowdStrike is offering for Windows as well. And this isn't a hypothetical because it has already happened, not 10, 12 years ago. This year, multiple times. Not to the same scale, otherwise you probably would have heard about it, but still happening. Here is a case posted over on Hacker News. CrowdStrike did this to our production fleet on April 19th, 2024, and I've been dying to rant about it. The short version was, we're a civic tech lab, so we have a bunch of different production websites made at different times on different infrastructure. We run CrowdStrike provided by our enterprise. CrowdStrike pushed an update on a Friday evening, which is the worst time to push an update. If you're going to be pushing out automatic updates, for the love of God, for all of the IT staff out there, don't push it on a Friday evening. What are you doing? That was incompatible with up-to-date Debian stable. So we patched Debian as usual, everything was fine for a week, and then all our servers across multiple websites and cloud hosts simultaneously hard crashed and refused to boot. Now, before anyone says, oh, but it probably wasn't Friday evening when they pushed the update because time zones. Don't push it anywhere near a Friday. Push it on Tuesday. Push it on a Wednesday. Somewhere very far away from the edges of the week. When we connected one of the disks to a new machine and checked the logs, CrowdStrike looked like a culprit, so we manually deleted it. The machine booted, tried reinstalling it again, and the machine immediately crashes. Okay, let's file a support ticket and get an engineer on the line. Keep in mind, doing this on a Friday evening. CrowdStrike took a data response, so now we're in Saturday, and then asked for a bunch more proof beyond the above that it was their fault. They acknowledged the bug a day later, now Sunday, and weeks later had a root cause analysis that they didn't cover our scenario, Debian stable running version N-1, I think, which is a supported configuration. In our post-mortem, there was no real ability to prevent the same thing from happening again. We push software to your machines anytime we want, whether or not it's urgent, without testing it, seems to be the core to the model. Particularly if you're a small IT part of a large enterprise, what they're selling to the enterprise is exactly that they'll do that. And in cases where the update is good, this is what they are paying for. This is what they expect from CrowdStrike. But when they don't test updates on testing and they test them in production, that's when you get a problem. Don't worry though, this is not the only case, because role-based systems like Rocky Linux also had the exact same problem. This was first reported over on the Rocky Linux forums, but seeing as though Rocky Linux is just RHEL at its core, the exact same was observed on RHEL, and a solution page is present in the knowledge base now. Issue: eBPF program causes kernel panic on kernels 5.14.0-410 plus. What the hell does that mean? Below is an example of a kernel panic on the Falcon sensor process, that being the CrowdStrike Falcon software. If you want to read through the log, feel free to go and do so. But I don't know how they even managed to achieve this. The whole point of an eBPF program is you can write code that interacts with the kernel that has protections in place that should stop it panicking the kernel. I don't even know how you managed to achieve this. Now, this happened back in May and then got a fix posted on RHEL on June 4th. There was another whole separate outage. This was actually a relatively big one. A few weeks ago, on June 27th, they released a defective update which pinned CrowdStrike's service at 90% CPU usage and led to rebooting computer taking upwards of 10 minutes. It took them 8 hours to release a fixed update, and then the computers needed to be rebooted multiple times. This one is not related to Linux. This was a Windows problem. But 3 weeks prior to 8.5 million systems being knocked out, they had the exact same problem happen, and they didn't put any systems in place to make sure it doesn't happen again. 100,000 systems was just a warm-up for what they were doing a few weeks later. In the case of this person, they experienced a problem in the medical sector, which is very bad because you don't want computers going down in the medical sector because people die. Like, how else do I put it? If you have problems with medical equipment, people might die. That is bad. And this is the key takeaway. Yes, it is kind of funny to look at all these production Windows systems and say, haha, look at that. Oh, they crashed. Oh, that's kind of funny. But never forget that untested code is untested code. If you are doing your testing in production and it's not good because it's untested code, whether we're talking Windows, Mac, Linux, or anything else, if it has great enough access to crash your system, or is able to do something in a stupid way where it can cause a crash through other means, it's a fork bomb, things like that, bad code is bad code, doesn't matter what operating system it's on, is going to cause some problems. Now, honestly, I don't know how this happened. Not just the giant 8.5 million systems, but the smaller event on Windows as well, the random little events on Linux that all happened in the span of a couple of months. The only possible way that I can see this happening is they just don't have proper processes in place to do testing. Like, they don't have automated testing in place to make sure this can't happen, because this wasn't a difficult problem to cause. Maybe it was difficult to solve, but systems were just crashing left and right for no reason, right? This is a problem that you only get into production by not compiling and testing your code. There is no other situation where this code makes its way into production. I don't understand otherwise. And look, again, I'm not saying it's a guarantee, but it is kind of funny that 2 giant situations, George Kurtz was a major figure in the company. I'm just saying. But the problem with big organizations, it doesn't matter which one it is the displacement of responsibility. Who is at fault for the problem? Who allowed it to be released? I don't know, not my department. But let me know what happened for you in the wake of the CrowdStrike situation. Were you maybe working that day and were actually affected? If you were, I would certainly love to hear that story. I had the day off, so I didn't get to experience that, sadly, but I would love to know. So if you liked the video, go like the video. And if you really like the video and you want to become one of these amazing people over here, check out the Patreon, Scribes, Libera Pay, linked in the description down below. That's going to be it for me, and give me kernel level access to your system. I promise I won't abuse it.
Like this.